हांगा एक कार्यावळ सुरू केल्या इंटरनेट एक्सप्रेस फाउंडेशनाच्या वतीन. फर्स्ट लेट्स ऑनर आवर हिरोज लिबिया लोगो सरदेसायचो कार्यक्रम घडिल्लो आणि सेकंड आमचो सगळ्यांचो माय मोगाचो एलेक्सिस. सो आय ऑन बिहाफ ऑफ थॉमस स्टीफन कोकिकेकर हांव आपयता फादर जुझे लवी की ताणें ह्यो प्रोग्रामची उलोवप करचें.
आज आमचे मध्ये एलेक्सिस बाब आसा, एक कार्टूनिस्ट, इलस्ट्रेटर, मागीर कॉन्शियन्स हे करपी आनी जायत्यो ताची हे आसा, जायती ताची खाशेलपण आसा. आज ताका आमी मान दिता. तेच भशेन तुमकां देव बरें करूं म्हणटा इतलो सगळो लोक तुमी हांगा आयले देखून. आनी ताचें नांव जें आज आमी पेपराचेर वाचता, सगळ्याक मिडियान आमी पळयता, एक फंकी पर्सनॅलिटी आसा. म्हणटच ताचे वरवीं आमकांय ताची वळख जावं आनी इंटरव्यू वरवीं मुलाखती वरवीं कितें तरी आमकां ताचे विशीं आमकां कळून येतलें आनी एक ज्ञान आमकां फावो जातलें देखून आमी आज फुडेंच आमच्या दोनूय संस्थांचें नांव म्हणजे इंटरनेट एक्सप्रेस फाउंडेशन आनी कोंकणी केंद्र दोनूय संस्थांचे वतीन आमी योगा दिता, तुमकां योगा दिता आनी हे कार्यावळीचो आमकां सगळ्यांक फळ मेळचो हीच आस आभार दिता. देव
So the first question is about that. When you were my age and football job, आणि दिमी and तुझे मार बसलो
pneumonia.
Yeah. But I read that it was because of your knees. You had a problem in the knees.
My knee got
These
pneumonia.
things need to be clarified. What happened? What was the what was the reason that turning point came? How did art suddenly happen? What was that turning point, and how did these unexpected turns turn into such a beautiful career?
See, I started carving at the age 40 actually, so it took a long time for me to graduate from my pneumonia to California, whatever.
Okay, but see, as a football player, you had you had long hair also, right?
Not in school, but when I came to Goa,
Right.
that's when I developed.
That's
When I
right.
first came, because I was the art teacher actually.
Okay, so you were trying to look the part, basically.
Yeah.
With the long hair. So going on to Mario Miranda, it's been well documented that he's a mentor of yours, and there is a special relationship between a mentor and the student. What is the one thing that you want to tell us about that mentorship and that guide in your life that inspires you even today?
The first thing that attracted me to Mario was that he was a banker. And when I first went to his cubicle in Times of India, I had just left college and I was going with the idea of doing cartooning or getting into advertising, and I knocked on his door and I told Mario, banker. And so Mario welcomed me inside and he said, and then he gave me whatever advice he could, and he put me on to several editors actually. And that is where I got my first break working in, since I was into sports. My first break came into doing cartoons in Sports Week, that Khalid Ansari was the editor. And then midday I did a lot of sports cartoons. And then again in the Indian Express I did a lot of sports cartoons. So sports was my first love, and that is where it took me initially to where I am now. Later on, when I came to Goa and I saw what was happening in Goa, I said, And when we first came to Goa, let me tell you my little background because Clara, everybody knows Clara, whereas everybody knows Norma, whereas, and we were college students in St. David's College in Bombay. And we used to go to a lot of social work camps all over India actually. We have worked in earthquake areas, we have worked in drought areas, we have worked in areas where the tribals thought the British were still around. So in such remote areas we have gone and we have seen, or even I have seen what India really was. And I think that was the turning point that helped me later on to decide that I should try and make an impact as a cartoonist. And I don't know whether I have succeeded, but I'm still trying because I have not given up. My work still continues, and I'm planning to get back into the papers now. And that is my own birthday gift for me.
Coming back to the subject of sports and art, a humble person out of Bradfield. Now, that is something that a lot of people did not know. But you have your work is immortalized alongside Don Bradman, and it's at the Don Bradman Museum. How on earth did such a collaboration happen? Like, did it happen? Did it start in Bombay? Did it start in Goa? And how did it end up?
But I want to know how many people know Don Bradman is not a Korean. I mean, you say Bradman, but it must have been. But Koreans, wherever they are, especially abroad, they all recognized as people of value, not the way we treat sometimes Koreans as people who are much below than what we are. So Don Bradman, you all know that Don Bradman was the first cricketer who broke all the records possible. How many know Don Bradman here? Okay, so I was a football fan actually. I wanted to be a football player, but cricket is a game of statistics, and it makes more interesting reading cricket than football. There are so many records. Every time Sachin Tendulkar used to play, he used to hit one ball, he used to break another record. So that always attracted me. Of course, in school, I played cricket I didn't play for my school, I played hockey. I was very good in athletics and very, very good in football. So cricket always attracted me. In fact, the first book that before I even became a cartoonist, was called Sportoons. And that was during the 1982 Asian Games. I was toying with the idea of being a cartoonist, and I read the Asian Games around the bend. And I said, why don't I do some cartoons and see if I can publish a book. And strangely, I did about over 100 cartoons, and I went to India because then and Bombay was one of the biggest publishers in India. And they really accepted my cartoons, and they said you should have come earlier. So that was an incentive for me to take up cartooning. And I did, as I told you, a lot of sports cartoons in the Bombay paper, not so much in Goa. So that was my background into sports. Whatever I played on the ground, I put into practice with my pen and paper.
So how did it end up at the Don Bradman Museum?
The Don Bradman thing. The strange thing about Don Bradman, when I did a big poster of Don Bradman, it was so big. And I'm calling it strange because what happened when I completed my poster, it is very strange. It is very weird actually because the next day Don Bradman died. After I finished my poster on Don Bradman, I was in touch with another Goenka in Bombay, and they had this bookshop called Marine Sports. It was the only sports bookshop in Bombay that time. And Marine Sports is still located in their Portuguese church in Bombay. So I had approached Theo, and earlier on he had published my book called House and A Century of Cricket Cartoons. I put all my cartoons which I did for Midday and Sports Week together and made a book out of it. And then I was inspired to, I said, why not Don Bradman? Because I had a lot of books on Don Bradman. And I said I'd do something because for me, Don Bradman epitomized the cricketer that everybody should dream to be. He was really a cricketer in every sense of the word. You know, it was called a gentleman's game, and I think if there was any gentleman in cricket, it was Don Bradman. So I was inspired to do something about him. So I wrote in this post. I'm sorry I didn't get it today. I didn't see your question. So in that poster, in verse I wrote all his whole life story in that poster of it. And then when my friend from Australia, Mario Carvalho, he's the guy who was very involved in the Konkani movement in Australia, and he was staying in New South Wales also, and Mario said, I will take it and give it to the museum. So the museum accepted and I had also in this book called, I have not got the